I'd like you to imagine your dream life. See the version of you who has what you want to have, feels how you want to feel, and is who you want to be. I'm Brittany Hoops, your hypnotherapist and manifestation coach, and this is the show where I'll teach you to master the full power of your mind, to guide you on your journey towards Destination Manifestation.
Take a step back.
Hello there, travelers. Welcome to another episode of the Destination Manifestation Podcast. Have you guys been loving all these episodes recently? I think this is literally the third episode this week alone, which I'm telling you, do not get used to this. I just wanted to kind of do something a little extra special, given that the Manifested Me Vault has launched this week and it's officially live. It launched on Tuesday. I know I mentioned that in the last episode. And this week has just been so much fun being launch week. It's been so much fun watching this community of manifestors come together, join the vault, start to become their manifested selves, and finally have those hypnotherapy tools that I've been talking about so much here on the show, for over a year. I think this is our 63rd episode, which is insane, that you can finally not only just learn about those techniques, right? But, there's only so much I can do here on the podcast. I can teach you about them. I can tell you about them. But then, up until this point, the only option was to work with me one-on-one if you wanted to experience them yourself, right? Which is great. I love my private hypnotherapy and coaching clients. But I also know that not everyone has the time, has the resources, or maybe even the interest to devote themselves to that sort of intense program and process. And so it's kind of the turbo boost, right? But it requires investment on a lot of different levels. And it's not that if you join the Manifested Me Vault, there isn't an investment, because you still have to commit to yourself. You still have to listen to them daily. The more you put in, the more you'll get out, which pretty much applies to anything in life, right? But I wanted there to be another way that you could access and utilize these tools for yourself. Because for me, there's nothing more inspiring than a group of people who come together to do it all. Like, that's the kind of souls I love to be with. I think those are my soul pod is people who want to do it all to get the most out of life. Like, those are the people I want to spend the most time with here in this incarnation on Earth. And I really feel so blessed to have created this hub that attracts those kind of people, the people that are doing the brain training, who are on that journey through the Manifested Me Vault. Also, you'll be noticing something kind of fun over the next several weeks here on the show, at least until I go on maternity leave, which is coming up later this summer. It's still a while from now, don't worry. But you'll be noticing that I'm bringing back the Manifesty Bestie series here on the show. If you've been a longtime listener, God, I can't even remember last time we did a Manifesty Bestie interview. It's been a while. But there's going to be more interviews on the show. There'll still be solo episodes like I've been doing here for, the past how many months, but I'm going to kind of bring back a mixture again. So to kick us off, I'm actually going to bring back an old favorite guest. So you'll have to tune in next episode to find out exactly who that is. I'm leaving you on a little bit of a cliffhanger here. I hope that that's next week, although it might be the week after. Things are a little crazy right now with the launch of the Manifested Me Vault. But next episode will certainly be her interview. So I'm leaving you on that cliffhanger. You're going to have to tune in to figure out who that is. I'll give you a little hint, though. Her first episode is still the number one most downloaded episode of this podcast, which is really exciting. And so I thought it was only fitting that to kick off the second round of these Manifesty Bestie interviews, we bring her back for another heartfelt conversation, which I can tell you, we've already recorded the conversation and it is so good, guys. She texted me afterwards and she was like, was it too vulnerable? Was it too much? And I'm like, are you kidding me? No. Like the way she shares her heart is just so beautiful. And I know you guys resonated with it last time, and I know you're going to love this episode even more. Okay. She's just so authentic the way that she shares her manifestation journey, the ups, the downs, the learnings. And it's just like, mwah, chef's kiss. Okay. I love it. I'm also in the process of scheduling some awesome new Manifesty Besties to join for future episodes. I'm in talks with several different people right now, so that's really exciting. So yeah, we got a lot going on here with the show, here with the Manifested Me Vault. I'm so excited to bring this all towards you. And, I'm just really I feel like I'm doing all this because I kind of had this epiphany here recently. I got really clear recently. I think it was when I was taking a shower. Don't all the best ideas come to you when you're in the shower? Do you experience that too? It's actually kind of interesting. There's actually a scientific reason why this is the case, okay? And it actually has to do a lot with what we talk about on the show. When you take a really nice, warm, relaxing shower, your body begins to relax, right? It feels good. And so too does your mind. And so what do we know that happens when you relax your mind? Well, your conscious mind begins to kind of step aside and your subconscious mind begins to open and become more receptive, right? And so those sort of aha moments, those like lightning bolts of inspiration, they're able to impact you and reach you on a deeper level. And so, this is what we do in hypnotherapy. We do this deliberately all the time, but sometimes if you're lucky, you can access that feeling in the shower too. And that's exactly what happened to me the other day. I was just sort of thinking, I sort of had this like aha subconscious mind moment while I was in the shower. And I realized what has really been lighting me up recently. I've been really called towards creating more community lately, which is so unlike me. Usually, my little introverted self, I just kind of like to hang, just me and my husband. That's it. Don't invite me anywhere, But I think I need to officially update my self-concept when it comes to this, because I don't think that's no longer true. I think honestly, well, ever since the pandemic, where many of us were kind of forced to not spend so much time with other people physically, right? I did, the pandemic happened. And then shortly after was my season of Big Brother. I realized that I crave and enjoy human connection and community so much more than I thought I did. And I've done a lot of healing and mindset work around this too, which I think has contributed to this craving. Like, to give you a background, I was bullied relentlessly in middle school, like really bad, get the school administration involved kind of level of bullying. And through hypnotherapy and healing some of those past wounds, I realized that I had this pattern. I developed this pattern of sort of putting up this front, right? Like this armor of this like, ugh, I don't like spending time with people, or I'm an introvert. I want to be alone. And it wasn't so much that that's true. It is true, but it's not the whole truth, right? It was more of a mechanism to count myself out before someone else could count me out. It's like I wanted to beat them to the punch. You couldn't bully me. You can't ostracize or reject me if I say I don't want to be around you first. It's an age-old story, right? So many people, I'm sure, can relate on this, right? And so I will say, going on the TV show Big Brother, in hindsight, it actually really accelerated that healing, or at least it brought it to the forefront to where I could no longer stay comfortable in those old excuses. I had to address it, right? And this wasn't because Big Brother was a comforting experience. Actually, it was quite the opposite. But I will say this, healing and growing often stems from discomfort. And like, I was a part of, if you watch my season of Big Brother, season 24, I was a part of the dominant alliance of that season, which was called The Leftovers. And we called ourselves The Leftovers because we all shared something in common. It felt like the cool kids, or so they thought, didn't want to have anything to do with this group of us. They'd all counted us out. We were left over. And that was hard because finding myself in that position, it sort of felt like history was repeating itself. And it's hard to be in a situation where your entire reality, I mean, Big Brother is the epitome of reality TV. It's as real as it gets. And yet, like, it's your whole reality, but it's also not real life at the same time, right? Like, my real life is me here in Austin, Texas, in my home with my husband. I'm pregnant with my baby girl. Like, that's real. Living on a soundstage in Los Angeles, California is not normal life to me, right? So it's real and it's not real at the same time. It's just this random 3 months where you're thrown into this entire alternate reality that is very real to you when you're in it, but it's still not your real life. Although in the moment, it's very much real because you're actually living it full time, in real time, in person. It's real. You are real. You're living and breathing in that moment, and yet it's not real at the same time. And so it really kind of plays this like crazy mind game on you, especially considering that it will continue to impact your real life for the rest of your life. I think anybody who's ever been on Big Brother can definitively say that their life is different after that experience in some way or another. You can't go back to who you were before that. And so I remember in the early days of my season, just sort of sitting there. I would go up to the have not room because no one wanted to be in that room. It was so cold. And I would just sit there alone and I'd just be sobbing. I'd just be so upset because I felt so discounted. I felt so left out from all these cliques that were developing in the house. And it just totally felt like middle school all over again. Especially me, given that the first twist of our season was, and thank God it was cut short, but it was this backstage pass sort of thing. And so it put a target on my back from hour one, day one in the house, where I immediately felt like an other in that space. I felt left out. And so I was, mourning this and grappling with this, but also at the same time, I was like, F this. I have friends at home. Like, this isn't real. Like, these people suck, but I have amazing people in my life who love me. And I just kind of kept on trying to ground me back into what I knew was real. Like, because it can be easy to like take it personally. Like, you can start being like, oh, I'm an awful person because a bunch of people don't like me. And it's like, no, it's just this group of 16 I don't really jive with for the most part. Of course, there were some amazing people in that group too. But like, the majority of those people not a fan of, and they weren't a fan of me. But it's like, I remind myself like of all the people that I had back in real life who were, And so I kind of had to keep on sort of like grounding myself back into another reality, the reality of my real life, and kept trying to remind myself to no longer be gaslit by this alternate reality that I was stuck in for 3 months, which was very real. You can't say it's not real because it is your whole existence for 3 full months of your life. That's a quarter of a year. That is very real. And so it kind of screws with your mind. So it is real while it's happening, but you still remember this other realer life that exists. And I was trying to remind myself and ground myself back in that one. And anyways, that experience, overcoming that, realizing my worth, even if other people couldn't see it, especially as I made it further and further and further in the game, there actually was, a period of a week or so towards the end of the game where no one in the house, even some people who had been my ally, no one was wanting to be associated with me. And it was in that moment that I really had to remember the truth of my worth anyways, even when living in a reality where 0 people were there for me, which thankfully most people, most of us, I would say, live in a reality where we at least have one person who likes us. Sometimes it might not feel like that, but there actually is somebody in your life. Like most of us have at least one person who cares. But that's a great exercise, although it's uncomfortable. It's a great exercise to be stuck in a reality where your contact to people are so limited, where you are only talking to 5 people, a week at a time, and finding your worth anyways, even when there is no one. That ended up being really healing in the long run for me to be able to do that. And then, of course, to get out of the house after that experience, you're confronted with both people who identify with you, who want to be in your world, who want to be your friend, like fans and whatnot. But then there's also this group of people who would have been the same group of people bullying you in the house should they have been chosen for the show, right? Like there's still a group of people who can't stand you. And I'll say this, this is not like unique to me. Every person on the show has their own group of those people who can't stand them. That's why we're all different in life, right? And so you kind of then have to learn that lesson all over again in like a much grander scale. And anyways, I think it sort of forced me to confront, to heal these things that I used to just sort of cover up with excuses like, I don't like to go out, or, I like to be alone. When in actuality, I actually really enjoyed living with 16 people for 3 months. Well, it kept on dwindling and dwindling as the months went on, right? But I loved having those fun conversations, and I loved eating big family dinners, and I enjoyed that element of it, which was kind of unexpected. I didn't think I would like that, but I really did. Now, of course, sometimes I wanted space, sure, but really I enjoyed all the laughter and the jokes and the conversations and the way that you get to know people on a really deep level, especially people from all different walks of life. And so I'm thankful to have realized that. And now, 3 years after the show, here I am becoming a mother. And I find myself entering this next chapter of craving community. Like I want to join mom groups, and I want to make mom friends, and I want to sort of surround myself with more local community. And that just isn't something that I've really prioritized all that much since I moved here to Austin. And it's kind of the same with the Manifest of Me Vault. Like I feel super called to create this beautiful community of manifestors. And I want to be the one that can create the tools that will specifically improve your life. And I want to share that together. And I want to hear what your experience is like when you listen to an audio, because I know what my experience is like. And like, I want to share those experiences together and create tools that are going to help you. And here I am bringing back this Manifesty Bestie series on the show, because I learn that usually whenever I host a guest on the show, or if I'm a guest on someone else's podcast, like 95% of the time, I usually become really, really, really good friends with that person afterwards. Like you just can't help it. When you're having kind of that deep level of conversation with somebody, it just sort of happens naturally, especially fellow manifestors and people in the field. So, I love that. I want more of that. I'm excited to create a community around that. Like I would love Destination Manifestation to not just be my platform, but I want it to be the destination that you go to hear from all the best manifestation teachers that are out there. Like I want this to be the destination manifestation. You don't need to go anywhere else. I bring all the teachers to you. And I think that's really cool. And I want to create community around that, maybe retreats around that, maybe masterminds around that. Like I want to bring all the people together. And so, it's actually kind of funny. There are 2 hypnotherapists that I am friends with right now who I've connected through podcast interviews, through Instagram. And we actually all 3 of us happen to be pregnant right now at the same time, which has been really fun. It's been really fun to have these hypno mamas, and we voice note each other back and forth, and we check in with each other, and we talk about our businesses and what it's like, to be a hypnotherapist who's about to go on maternity leave. And, it's just been such a joy. And I'm excited to create more community around that. So creating community is something I'm really excited to explore here. You're going to see it have an impact on the show. And it's kind of one of my many, many, many goals I have on my radar right now. And I'm kind of constantly checking in with myself, asking myself, how do I get the most out of life? And I know that's something that so many of us crave, especially as manifestors. Like we want to do it all. But I do think sometimes there's these voices, either out there in society, maybe even the ones in our own head, right? That somehow tell us that doing it all is impossible. That kind of seems to be a narrative that exists out there. Like, oh, you can't do it all. You got to pick, you got to choose, right? And so I want to help you silence those voices here today, if that's something you're interested in putting on mute. Because getting the most out of life, it kind of tends to be a core tenet of the community that I'm drawn to. And if that's something you want to do, I really want to help you do it. So that's what we're going to explore here today. How to do it all, how to get the most out of life. Now, you don't have to create community like I am focused on. You can do whatever you want to do. That's the beauty of it. You get to decide. But I want to help you do it in a way that feels really good and aligned to you. Okay? So first of all, if you want to get the most out of life, you gotta protect your thoughts. Okay, protect where you're getting your thoughts from. Protect what you're allowing to enter your mind. Your mind, and I will say especially your subconscious mind, it is a sacred space, okay? Not everyone has earned real estate there. So really be wary, really become cognizant, have some awareness and mindfulness of whose thoughts you're adopting. And do you want to adopt those? You've probably heard me use this metaphor before. I always like to use the hot potato analogy, right? Someone thinks a thought like, oh, you can't do it all. And it's like a little hot, stinking potato, okay? And they're just tossing that hot potato over to you. They say that thought in front of you. Maybe you read that thought as a headline on social media. Lord knows I've been following all these like mommy Instagram accounts, and like I'll read something and I'm like, that headline is so, they're stating it like it's a fact, but that is such an opinion. Like why? And I'll just like unfollow. Like I don't need that negativity. Like I just don't need it in my life, right? So many people like to phrase their thoughts like their truth. Maybe somebody gives you advice, And so that's all fine. It's all good, right? They're allowed to do that. They're allowed to voice their opinion. But here's the other part of it. You get to decide. Once they toss that little stinking hot potato at you, you get to decide if you want to catch it or not, if you want to catch that thought, if you want to adopt that thought or not, because you're the one who's going to end up getting burned. And I'm suggesting that if you want to do it all, you have to be extra discerning of whose thoughts you adopt. And I will fully admit that includes the thoughts I'm offering you right now. Okay, that includes mine too. I am not off limits from this. I only take the thoughts I offer here on the podcast if they feel good and resonate with you, which I would hope you wouldn't be listening to the show if they didn't, right? They might not. That is really up to you. Why I offer these thoughts via this podcast is because they're the thoughts that have really helped me. And they've helped so many of my private clients. They've helped so many of my students now in the Manifested Me Vault. And so when it comes to people sort of poo-pooing on your dreams or your ability to do all that you want to do, really ask yourself, who says? Like, no, really, who says? In fact, let's do a little NLP exercise here right now. This has been a really eye-opening exercise for me. So I want you to take a moment. I want you to think of any sort of little doubting thought you may currently have about your manifestation, okay? The thing that you're in the process of attracting right now. So just take a moment. What's the sort of talk track that's been in your mind? What's like a doubting thought that's come up, okay? Got one? Now I want you to listen to that thought. Hear that thought in your inner mind, even just for a second. Where is that voice in your mind? Like, where does it sound like it's coming from? Is it coming like from above? Does it feel like a little devil on your shoulder? Like, is it over your shoulder? I want you to sort of in your inner mind with your inner ears, hear the voice of that thought. What direction is it coming from? What does the voice sound like? Is it your own voice? Is it deeper? Is it faster? Is it slower? What sort of intonation does that voice have? Can you tell what sort of emotion is behind that voice? Here's a big question. Does it sound like anyone you know? This one can be extra trippy. You know what? I did this exercise a few weeks ago. I was getting some kind of like pre-launch jitters for the Manifest in Me Vault, which is funny to realize now because even though we're still in launch week for the Manifest in Me Vault, already so many of you beautiful manifestors have joined. But a few weeks ago, I was nervous, I kind of had this nagging thought in the back of my mind, like, what if I spent 7 months creating this magnificent library of manifestation hypnotherapy sessions, pouring my soul into the best techniques for people, translating what I do with my private one-on-one clients into an accessible library that's going to help transform even more people's lives. Like, what if I did all that and no one joins? And my answer was like, well, at least I'll have the audios then. I listen to them every day. But still, I want to share them with people. That's the goal here, right? But I would say the thought wasn't even like that was the intent behind the thought, but the thought didn't even present itself like that. It presented itself in a different way. It was more like, no one's going to join the Manifest in Me Vault, Brittany. Like that's what it sounded like in my head. Nasty, right? The voice was so condescending. It was so matter of fact. It was so like, duh, you can't see this, but everyone around you can see this, and they're laughing at you thinking that you can do this. Like it was like that kind of like emotion behind it. It was gross. And so for just like a brief little moment, I took that thought at face value and it really made me feel nervous and it really made me feel down on myself and like question myself and be like, oh my gosh, am I so out of tune with what people want? And like, it made me question myself until I did this exercise that we just did here right now. And you know what I realized? That voice wasn't mine. No, it didn't actually sound like me. When I actually listened to it and asked myself that question, the voice actually sounded like someone I knew, okay? And I'm not going to say who, but someone close in my life, okay? It was a familiar voice. Now, this person happens to be a very judgmental person. They know this. I'd say this to their face. This is not news. But it's kind of taken me a lifetime for me to hear their judgments. And I will say this, many other judgments are not directed at me, right? But I hear them judge other people, other things, anything and everything in life. I've heard those judgments. And those judgments are so often phrased like facts. And it's taken me a whole lifetime to sort of pull apart and to kind of fact check those judgments in real time and say, well, wait, that's not necessarily true. Just because you stated it like a fact doesn't make it true. And do you guys know anyone like this? I mean, gosh, sometimes I'm like this. Maybe even sometimes you find yourself like this. And it's funny because I think this habit, if you do find yourself doing this, or if you do know someone who does this habit might serve those kind of people very well in their life. In fact, I'll tell you this. I remember this particular person gave me some career advice. They were very successful in their career. And the advice was basically like, fake it until you make it. Just sounds so convincing that you know what you're talking about, that people just believe you, even if you don't. That was the advice. And it's kind of funny because you can see like, oh, that habit of just being so utterly convincing and stating opinions as fact could benefit you in some ways, but it's also harmful in other ways, especially to those people who take on those opinions, especially if those opinions aren't necessarily all that supportive and they adopt them as their own fact, right? I had taken that hot potato and I had held on to it until let third degree burns, in my inner mind, right? And so, somebody might be able to say, pigs can fly, Brittany. And the way that they say it is almost so convincing and so stated like fact that you almost begin to believe them, right? And so when I heard this thought in my head, and here's the funny thing, this person didn't even say this, but it's the conditioning, it's the habit, it's the pattern. And that's one of the reasons why, if you find yourself in a relationship, and it can be any kind of relationship, right? But if it's a relationship that's not always supportive, or it may be toxic in some sort of way, that you can feel the compounding effect of that, even when that person isn't there. Like, even if that person isn't saying anything to you or isn't there, you still hear their talk track in your head. And that's why it's so important to do this kind of hypnotherapeutic work, to reprogram those patterns, to become aware when it's not your thought, it's a habitual parroting and echoing of their thought in your head. And you're deciding that you no longer want that in your life, right? And so when I heard this thought in my head, no one's going to join the Manifest in Me vault, Brittany, I instantly recognized that voice. And it did two things for me, okay? One, I realized it was their voice, their thought. And it wasn't mine. And in fact, it probably wasn't even theirs because they didn't directly say that to me. It was my mind taking, their voice and assigning it to me because I've heard so many other judgments, in that similar vein for so long, right? And so to realize that is huge. That's not my voice, which means that's not my thought. But I do want to point this out too. When you did this exercise, if your doubt did sound like you and your voice, I did this with my husband and he picked a random thought about doubt about something he was thinking about recently. And I asked him and I was like, who does the voice sound like? Who does the voice sound like? And he's like, oh, it sounds like my own. That's okay. I don't want you to think that, oh, that means it's true now. Like, no, it doesn't. Don't let that alarm you. I want you to then tune into what part of you was speaking. Was it manifested you's voice? Was it your higher self's voice? If I was a betting woman, I would say it's neither of those voices. It was probably the part of you that's trying to protect you. And, and it's probably doing so pretty ineffectively based on old habitual conditioning and patterns. And I will tell you that kind of work is a whole other can of worms that we can address in a different episode. But I do want to bring it to your attention all the same, right? Hypnotherapy can help you discern those different parts of you, those different voices. Because you don't have to be schizophrenic, right? To hear these inner voices and to understand that your self-concept is made up of so many different parts. And there are certain parts that are going to take the driver's seat during certain times in your life. Just like there's a part of you that reads, or there's a part of you that cooks, or maybe not. You might lack that part if you're anything like me, right? But there are these different parts of you. And so when you're driving, or when you're reading, or when you're teaching, right, there's going to be these different parts of you that kind of shine in their moments that help you, show up in the world in different ways. And especially, there are parts that have been created through habits and conditioning and past experiences that you've had that are protective parts for you. And they might try to really shout. They might try to really speak louder than others at times in order to try to protect you, even if the way that they're going about it isn't so effective. So realizing that this voice wasn't my own really helped me begin to zero in on the pattern. Just how that person in my life states their opinions are fact, most of the time they're wrong. Like, this just happens to be what it is. Of course, they never really follow up and admit that they're wrong most of the time. That's the problem. But usually they are wrong most of the time. But for so many years, especially as a child, I really couldn't tell the difference, right? I thought it was all true. I thought all the opinions were true. And so it would make sense to realize that now there's this sort of deep fake version of their voice in my head that's not necessarily true, but purely as a learned subconscious pattern. And once that becomes aware to you, that's when you can reprogram it. That's when you can say, you know what? We're good. I could see the thought for what it was, that it was just this parroting of a voice of someone who usually reserves their support until after something has been proven successful, but usually not before. And so then you can see the thought for what it is, and you can hypnotherapeutically reprogram to say, you know what, that voice doesn't get to comment on my business. That's a part that is uninvited from the conference table of how I run my business, because it's not helpful, right? It's just so and so blustering again in my own mind, and I don't need to listen to that. That's not true. It's not my thought. It's just a pattern. And in fact, I can then reprogram that pattern by repeating new supportive thoughts in my own voice, inviting a new part to my board of directors that's actually going to be supportive of what I'm creating, and sort of drowning out that old voice with a voice that's actually more helpful to me. And you can do this process too. And sure enough, the thought wasn't true. The manifested me has been a success, and I can't wait to welcome even more manifestors into this space. So I want you to do this process too. I want you to tune into your doubting thoughts. Do they sound like anyone you know? And I actually have kind of this whole hypnotherapeutic technique that I do with people, and that I continue to do with myself too, to reprogram these things. Usually I do this in a one-on-one setting with private clients, but maybe I'll adapt it into a Manifested Me Vault audio session here soon. But it's this technique where you're actually able to give those old thoughts back to that person. And maybe it's not even thoughts. Maybe that you need to necessarily give back to them, that you've adopted from them. Maybe it's a bad habit that you picked up from them. Or maybe it was a trauma. Maybe it was a belief. Whatever it is that you subconsciously sort of adopted as your own, what we do is we box it up and then we give it back to them, because it's theirs. It's not yours. All right? It's theirs to heal. And so they kind of threw their hot potato at you, but you no longer have to be the one that catches it and gets burned. And so that's what we have to do if we want to have it all. You have to hear where those thoughts are coming from, so that, those thoughts that are coming from, where they're coming from and what they're telling you, especially if they're ones that tell you that you can't do something. And I think us women are particularly bombarded with that message, like I mentioned before, following those social media accounts. I think as I notice myself becoming a mother, it's like all of a sudden there's all this like, oh, you can't do that. You have a baby now. And I'm like, who says? Who says? I can figure this out. And I think we hear so much negativity around getting to do it all because, frankly, there are quite a few people who haven't been able to figure out how to have all that they want in life just yet. And so instead of realizing that they are on their own journey of figuring that out, they just sort of assume that it's impossible. Since it's impossible for them, it must be impossible for everyone. And then they want to convince you that it's impossible for you too, because it just makes them feel better about themselves. If you're in their club of impossibility, right? They feel better when it's an impossible fact that applies to everyone, rather than just something that they haven't quite figured out just yet, or something that they're unwilling to figure out just yet. Maybe it feels too hard and they're unwilling to put in that work to figure it out. I mean, that happens, okay? That's okay. And I think it just is a whole lot easier for them. It makes them feel a whole lot better if you believe it too. And But I want to remind you that that's not your job, okay? Your job is to live a life of your own design and to get the most out of that life. So what thoughts will support that instead? Let's prioritize those thoughts. Let's hear those thoughts in your own voice. And, because you can decide right here, right now, that those thoughts are your own. Those thoughts that are going to say, yes, I can do this. Yes, I can figure out a way. No, I don't have to listen to anybody else who thinks otherwise. You get to decide that. You get to decide what thoughts you let in. Now, here's another aspect to consider, okay, as we think about having it all. You can do it all, but do you even want to do it all at the same time? Again, let's be very cognizant of the difference between an opinion versus a physical law fact here, okay? And I bring this up because multitasking is a thing, right? I'm not going to sit here and say that it's impossible to do two things at the same time. You can do two things at the same time. Just because it's possible to do two things at the same time doesn't necessarily mean that those two things will be done well if you were to do them at the same time or that you would enjoy that experience. You could text and drive at the same time. You could do that, but then you dramatically increase your chances of getting into an accident. You dramatically increase your chances of hurting yourself and others. You dramatically increase your chances of getting a fine or a ticket or, even worse, right? Those are the consequences and the risks that you take. Just because you do it all doesn't make, I should say it this way. Just because you can do it doesn't make it a choice that you might want to even make, right? When it comes to doing it all at the same time, some people thrive with that level of activity, right? And that level of busyness. I'm sure you know somebody who's just like an Energizer buddy, just like going, going, going. Like they love to be busy. Now, some other people might say, whoa, that's too much for me, right? I feel burnt out. I feel overcommitted when I'm juggling too much at once. And so I think it's just really good for you to realize what level of activity and how much you want to take on at a time. Now, for me personally, I know that I can do it all. I just can't, or I would say I don't want to do it all at the same time. Because for me, it's not a race. Like I don't wear busyness like a badge of honor. The only reason I want to do certain things in my life is because of how I think those experiences will make me feel. Abraham Hicks teaches this a lot. Like I'm not collecting moments or like activities for collection's sake, right? I'm doing things because I think they will feel additive to my life, which means that I need to have the time and I need to have the mental space open to enjoy those things. And so if I do them all at the same time, that's no longer going to feel additive. That's no longer going to feel good. It's kind of like imagine like taking your top 10 favorite foods, okay? And then adding them all to a blender and blending them all up. Like, is that favorite food smoothie going to be your ultimate favorite food? The absolute best tasting food you could ever have ever? Or will it taste disgusting? Now, I think mine would actually taste pretty bad, like a pizza, Kit Kat, Torchy's queso, frozen margarita, blended drink. oh, gross. That sounds like something you'd have to eat on Big Brother. Like that would taste awful, right? So you can eat it all, but you probably wouldn't even want to eat it all at the same time. Same thing with life. You can do it all, but you probably don't even want to do it all at the same time. It won't taste so good. So that requires you to do some prioritization, right? It's like, doing one of those puzzles that they have on the TV show Survivor, right? You have to figure out which piece needs to come first so that the next piece can follow after that. And it's learning to trust yourself that if something truly matters to you, you're going to figure it out. And if that something isn't working, rather than saying, throwing up your hands and saying, oh, that's impossible for me, you keep plugging away and you keep figuring out what changes you need to make. so that you can get to where you want to be. I will tell you, Lord Almighty, I have been doing this a lot here recently. Even today, I think I was like 1 or 2 hours delayed on recording this podcast episode because I've been experiencing all this with the studio setup lately, right? I've gotten to like 95% of the way of like what I envisioned when I set out to create this earlier this year. But every time there's some sort of technical behind the scenes thing that like trips me up. And I'll take that moment. I'll get so frustrated and I'll just like want to rip my hair out and why am I doing this, right? Because technical audio visual stuff is not really my strong suit. I'm learning as I go. But I'll take that moment, I'll let it out, and then I'll say, okay, what do I got to do to figure this out? Let's take this into bite-sized chunks. And maybe I'll turn to someone that I trust that knows more than I do. Most recently, I've been reaching out to a fellow BB24 Turner. We had him on the show in episode 29. He's a filmmaker. He's been helping me make some tweaks, right? And troubleshoot some things. Or I might turn to good old ChatGPT and say, here's what's happening and here's what I've tried. Like, what else can I try? What can I do, to try to troubleshoot some of these things? And each time I run into a snag, I have that brief moment where I want to rip my hair out. And it's okay to give yourself that, right? You can just let your steam out for a moment, but then you got to stop. You got to stop and say, what do I need here? What do I do next? Because for me, I didn't put in all this work to get it to 95% and then give up. I'm aiming and I'm refining until I get to the exact vision that I've been holding, right? And I think it's important to point this out because I think a lot of us, I know especially a lot of clients I work with, struggle with perfectionism. And I would say that this is different than perfectionism. And not just because it's what I'm doing. I would admit if I was trying to be perfectionist about it, but it's really not rooted in perfectionism. Perfectionism usually stems from this need to be perfect and that you won't take action. You'll delay taking action unless it can be perfect, or I'm going to stop if it can't be perfect. I'm not delaying anything here. It's actually quite the opposite. I'm suggesting to you to continue to take step after step after frustrating step in order to figure this out. So if you happen to be watching the YouTube version of the show right now, you'll see that I'm here, right? Perfectionism typically keeps us stuck from taking action until it's perfect. No, what I am suggesting is keep taking action, keep showing up, even if it isn't perfect, but allow yourself to keep refining it until it matches the vision that you're wanting to manifest, right? It's a refinement process. It's problem solving. It's holding the vision and continuing to stick with it until you see its completion, until you've created what you wanted to create in the world. And I think there's a big difference there, right? Perfectionists usually don't take action because they're scared of it not being perfect or being seen as perfect. What I'm asking you to do is to keep taking that action, to say, there's nothing's going to happen here that makes me stop and say this is impossible. I know this can be possible if I have my vision set on it and I keep making those tweaks. So if you want to get the most out of life, what do you need to tweak in order to do so? And if that doesn't work, what do you need to do next? Keep at it. What do you need to make this possible for you? That's the mentality. And, I'm excited to kind of apply this to my business post-maternity leave. As you guys probably know, I'm 30 weeks pregnant now. Baby girl is due in early August, and I'm going to be taking a 3-month maternity leave. And luckily enough, the Manifested Me Vault is launched now, so you guys won't even be able to tell that I'm gone. You'll still get all the hypnotherapy support from me that you desire if you're a member of the Vault. But I'm going to be snuggling my little girl. I'm going to be healing. I'm going to be living my best mom life for 3 months, right? Now, after those 3 months, I'm trusting that I will have learned enough of how to become a mother, more than I know right now. And she will have learned enough on how to become a human here on earth, more than she knows here right now, that we can figure out what a new normal looks like together, right? And I can figure out what that looks like for my business so that I have time to dedicate back to my business again. And so I keep asking myself, and I plan on asking myself at the end of those 3 months, what do I need so that I can have enough time to grow my business and be there for my students and my clients and continue with the podcast and do all these things that really matter and that I want to do, right? How much time do I have available while she's napping during the day that I could do some of these things? How often can my husband watch her while I steal a few hours to go work? Can I call my mom who lives 10 minutes away to come over and watch her a few days a week, right? Can I hire help? What are the activities that maybe I used to do before that now I can, get someone else to do? I can hire someone else to do on my team, or that I can decide just doesn't need as much of my attention right now, right? So that was just in 2 seconds. I thought of 5 different ideas, right? There are so many options. And I'll say this, the first option I explore may not work, or I might need to pair multiple options together. And that's okay, because you keep coming back. You keep fine tuning and using what you learned to inform what you do next. Even if it takes a million bazillion tries, right? You figure it out. What do I need to do to make this possible? I'll admit this, my clients sometimes get a little frustrated with me because they'll say, Brittany, I've already tried XYZ for my goal. And so now they're using that as evidence to prove that it's impossible for them, across the board, that the goal is just impossible. We're just ruling it out for them. And I'll lovingly point out, great. Okay, you've done X, Y, and Z. We've ruled out 3 things and a million, zillion, trillion ideas. Good. What are we going to do now? What's idea number 4 of million, zillion, trillion? Let's keep crossing them off the list, because there's always a next step. Each goal that exists out there in the world has a million, zillion, trillion, if that's even a number, potential ways that you could go about it. And each time you attempt one way and you explore one way fully, the good thing about that is that you're going to learn more that's going to point you towards the next option that may work. And I know it's silly, but that has to be a lesson that we learn. And it's actually a lesson that I've learned from utilizing AI and ChatGPT more in kind of my day-to-day life. And I wonder if you've experienced this too, if you use these tools. I think so many of us, especially millennials, we grew up with Google searches, right? With a Google search, you sort of have to know what you're searching. And you type in your search query, and based on what you search, you're going to get an answer. And that answer is going to answer your question or it's not. And then you have to come up with kind of a whole new search if it didn't answer your question, right? But it's a different mentality when it comes to ChatGPT, right? And I kind of have to remind myself of this, because sometimes I use ChatGPT like Google, and it's a different mentality. It's not the same way of thinking. It's very different. And the key difference is that I can ask ChatGPT a question, and it can give me a whole list of potential ideas or solutions. But then here's the different part. I can then give it more information based on that. I can say, hey, thanks for the ideas. I'm always nice to ChatGPT, just in case it takes over the world someday. I want to be on its good side, right? And so I can say, hey, thank you for those ideas. I've already tried 1, 5, and 7, and here's what happened. Here's why I don't think number 2 would work in my instance, and here's more information, right? Given that additional information I've been able to provide, what do you think I should attempt next? With some of these tech things that I had going on with the studio, right? And it's going to take that in and it's going to be oh, thank you for that information. That makes a lot of sense, blah, blah, blah. And it will then give you new, refined ideas based on what you've learned. And there hasn't really come a point yet where it says, oh, sucks for you. No solution in sight. No, AI understands something that most of us humans don't really quite yet, which is there's always a solution. There's always a next step. There's always something more we can do. You try one thing, and if you decide it doesn't work for you, That's not true. You just haven't done enough yet. You stopped too early. And that's the only true reason why it hasn't worked out for you, is simply because you stopped too early. So, like this studio, I have bought so many pieces of equipment that I've had to return. There's been some that I completely missed the return window entirely, so I'm just stuck with them. And I'm just kind of always acutely aware whether a limitation is like a real limitation versus a self-imposed limitation. Because just like facts versus opinions, we can sometimes think that there is a limitation there, but it's actually self-imposed. For instance, I got this camera lens. The one that I originally bought was the wrong one. Didn't really give me the look that I was going for. And I could have said, oh no, this is the lens. I just spent $250 on this, so I have to make this work. But the truth is you don't, right? Other lenses exist out in the world. So, you can make that work if that matters to you, but recognize that it is a self-imposed limitation if you're going to do that. It's not a real one. So, I bucked it up and I got a new lens. And ends up, I didn't even have to get a completely brand new lens because my old camera had the lens that I wanted. I just had to get an adapter so that it could work with my new camera. And that adapter was far cheaper than actually buying a completely brand new lens. So I had some luck. But I want you to really notice where you might be saying, I can't. But the real reason is I don't want to, ... because, right? Because if you simply don't want to, well, then that's easy. You can figure out a solution where you would then want to, or we can work on the mindset around how you could get it to a point where you would want to. That just needs some tweaking. Self-imposed limitations are ones that you can take down, which is a really good news for us to realize. So here's another thing. If you want to do it all, if you want to make the most out of life in every possible way, it's completely up to you. I hope you've realized that by now. I hope you've taken home that message. And that's kind of the beautiful thing about it. You get to decide what this looks like. I mentioned Abraham Hicks before. You guys know I love me some Abraham, my favorite manifestation teacher. And they teach the idea of the vortex. Okay, so the vortex, if you're unfamiliar, is just their word for the infinite field of kind of quantum energy, of potentiality, of possibility, where every single permutation of potential future reality that will be your 3D reality could potentially ever exist. Everything you could ever imagine that you would ever want already exists in your vortex. It's the quantum field of potentiality. So I want to ask you this. Do you know what exists in yours? And this is really nerdy, but I know exactly what exists in mine because I actually keep a master vortex list. I keep it on my computer. And it's kind of this list of every single thing I could ever possibly imagine that I want to do in this lifetime. It's kind of one huge master goal list. And I'll tell you this, I knew I wanted to talk about this in this episode. So before I sat down to record this episode, I was kind of curious to see, let's look at this list. How many things are on this list? Because I knew it was massive. And I counted, and my list at 35 years old currently has 110 things on this list. So I will say this, many of those things incorporate hundreds of smaller things under just one of them, but it's basically 110 main things on this list. And I know that this list, as I have more desires, this list, you never reach the end of this list. That's not the point. This list is going to continue to grow. And this list is going to keep me busy for the rest of my life and probably even for multiple lifetimes after that. This list is my soul's calling. And I kind of like to think that this list was something that maybe I predetermined even before coming here to Earth. Like I said, yes, this is what I want to accomplish here in this life. Send me down to Earth, beam me down, Scotty, I'm ready, right? And so if you guys listen to the show, you know I'm a huge fan of the book called The Journey of Souls. And in this book, it talks about how before we come here to Earth and we incarnate in these bodies, we pick the soul lessons that we want to learn in this lifetime. We pick the dreams we want to fulfill and we decide what we want to create here on Earth. And this list for me is it. And I think one of the coolest things about this list is that no one else in the entire universe would have the exact same list as me. Not a single person. My list is going to be different than your list. It's going to be different than somebody else's list, right? For example, you might put on your list that you want to go camping for 6 weeks in Colorado, whereas someone would need to pay me over $1 million to do that. Like, that's my worst nightmare. Sleeping outside? No, thank you. Yet it might be your dream, right? It's kind of funny. Do you guys play that game? My husband and I play this game all the time. We'd be like, how much money would you need to get paid to do X, Y, or Z? And usually because I'm bougie, it's something like, we'll be on a road trip or something. We'll pass by this really grody looking motel. And I'll be like, oh, that place must be infested with cockroaches. Like, it looks so gross from the outside. And I'll ask him, I'll be like, how much money would you need to be paid to spend a night there? Or like the other day, we passed by this Walmart and I saw that inside the Walmart, there was a McDonald's, like in the Walmart, like double whammy. And I asked him, I was like, how much money would you need to be paid to eat at that McDonald's inside that Walmart? And he's like so much cheaper than I am. Like I said, I'm very bougie. I'm a bougie gal, right? I'm going to need to be paid if I'm going to risk my health and my life on Walmart McDonald's. And I think my reasoning was like, okay, I'm probably going to get food poisoning. So how many days would I be out of work? I want to make sure I get that salary back that I would miss. And then also I deserve some interest for my troubles, right? Anyways, that's kind of my rationale with it. Point being, we all have different dreams. We all have different goals. Yours are uniquely yours, but you got to know what they are in order to fulfill them. So I want you to notice anytime you have a thought like, ooh, I'd like to do that. It could be big, it could be small. Go ahead, write it down. Create your own master dream vortex list. And that's the invitation I kind of want to leave you with today. You can live a life that is entirely your own. You can do it all. You really can. But you can, and you probably will want to do it in a way that feels aligned, possible, and deeply yours. Because it's going to look different for each and every person. But what makes it possible is for it to fit you. Uniquely you and what you want to create, and for you to believe that it is possible for you to protect your mind, to trust your desires, and to build a life that truly supports the version of you that you're becoming. And so if today's episode just stirs something within you, if you're feeling inspired to take up more space and to own your dreams, and I mean all of them, right? We want to do it all. And to finally rewire the thoughts and the patterns that have been keeping you small, then I want to lovingly remind you of something, okay? Today, May 30th, if you're listening to this live, is the last day to join the Manifested Me Vault as a founding member. Now, you guys heard me talk about the Manifested Me Vault throughout this episode, right? When you join today, not only are you going to lock in access to this full library of manifestation hypnotherapy sessions that are specifically designed to reprogram your mind at the root, at the source, you also, by being a founding member, here's what that means. You receive 2 exclusive bonuses that are going to disappear after tonight. Okay, only founding members, people who join this week, and today is your last day to join this week, are going to get access to these. So here's what they are. The first one is a bonus hypnotherapy session. It's called Building Positive Momentum to Reach Destination Manifestation. Now, I will tell you, I freaking love this technique in this session. I've been using this technique with a few of my one-on-one clients recently, and it has been so powerful. So this audio session was created to help you keep going in the direction of your dreams, to help keep you rising, to help you build that unstoppable energy towards the life that you've been dreaming of. Now, a lot of times we find that we're working towards this goal or think we're heading towards it, but we're actually pointed in the wrong direction. And so no wonder we're like heading west when we should be heading east. And we're wondering, where's our dream? Where's our goal? Where is it? Where is it? And we're just going in the actual opposite direction, meaning we're thinking and we're feeling and we're taking action in ways that don't support getting the most out of our lives. And so this session is designed to bring some clarity to that and then also help you get back on track if you feel like you've derailed. But it is only available to founding members, and founding members are defined as anyone who joins this launch week. So if you've already joined, you're a founding member. And if you join today, Friday, May 30th, you can become a founding member and get those extra exclusive bonuses before they close at midnight tonight. Also, as a founding member, you're also going to receive a behind-the-scenes bonus episode of this podcast. Yes, that's right. It is not going to be posted here just for everyone on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or YouTube. It's just for Manifested Me Founding Vault members. And this is kind of, in this episode, I pull back the curtain. I share my personal daily hypnotherapy manifestation process, like what I actually do in my own life to manifest my goals using hypnosis. And I share my most up-to-date routine. So if you've ever wondered how I go about manifesting, how I stay grounded, how I stay aligned and focused, this is a great resource. We get into the nitty-gritty of all the specifics. So if this podcast has been a place where you felt seen, where you felt empowered, where you feel just more like true you, which I really hope is the case, that's my intent with it, the vault is that, but take it to the next level. And it's not just about manifestation, really. It's about you becoming the version of you who gets to have it all. Your version of manifested me. Because manifested you is different than manifested me, is different than manifested her or him, right? And I want you to help create your own unique version of you. So I want you to grab your founding member spot today. This is the last day, if you're listening to this live, Friday, May 30th, and in order to do so. And I'd love to see your name pop up so I can officially welcome you into the vault. Because your dream life isn't actually on hold, folks. It's just simply waiting for you. And so I want you to join now at BrittanyHoops.com/manifested-me-vault, or you can just find the link in the show notes. And I'll see you on the inside.
I don't know.